Welcome to A Drop of Silence, the groundbreaking podcast series that dives deep into the realms of controversy. Join us as we bring special guests who share their extraordinary experiences and offer unparalleled insight into history, today's news headlines, and the future. Get ready to embark on a thought-provoking journey where silence speaks volumes and the truth lies somewhere beneath the surface.
What time will it be when war is no more? When bullets are melted and the warships moor.
Shalom. This week, I am interviewing Mr. Joel Marcovitch. I have known Joel for about 20 years now, which is hard to believe. He has been the head of Hillel and the University of Michigan. He has been executive director to many Jewish organizations and community centers, and he's a very brilliant man. He's great insight into things, and he's highly respected in the United States and other parts of the world, to the point when Bibi Netanyahu came to the capital of Washington to talk to Congress. He was one of the people that was in the audience. He was asked to please be there for commentary afterwards. And Joel has a very specific way of looking at anti-Semitism, and he's been able to put it down into 6 different categories, and it's absolutely fascinating what he talks about. I hope you enjoy it. Welcome to A Drop of Silence, a controversial podcast series where our special guests share their unique experiences and insights regarding world history, the news headlines, and the future. And with me today is Joel Marcovitch. Joel has been a good friend for a long time, and with a strong commitment to making the world a better place, Joel Marcovitch has always combined his business acumen with a deep sense of purpose to create innovative solutions and inspire others to push boundaries and create a better future. I mean, he's seriously talented and brilliant. With an impressive track record, beginning at Hillel in Michigan, then to Toledo and on to Columbus, Ohio, Joel has successfully founded and led groundbreaking initiatives that have revolutionized the way organizations under his leadership have interacted with their respective communities to drive success. Beyond his entrepreneurial mindset, he is actively involved in philanthropic initiatives championing causes related to education, diversity, equity, and inclusion, sustainability, and social justice, which is basically what all of the Drop of Silence podcasts are about. Exactly that. Welcome, Joel Marcovitch. How are you doing?
I'm good. Excited to be here. Looking forward to our conversation.
I know, and of course, delving into it quite heavily. What I want to talk to you about is anti-Semitism in North America and around the world, because for me, there are actually places in Windsor now that, because I'm a Jew, I'm afraid to walk down the street. Mm-hmm. And I have never felt that ever. So are we just being paranoid now, or is there a big uptick in anti-Semitism?
I think there's always an uptick in anti-Semitism. If you look at the statistics from the ADL year after year, there's anti-Semitism that's reported. It used to be a person, it still is, but very much online, people hiding behind names and anonymous kind of IP addresses to spew the most hateful things online. I think what's more concerning for me, and having really been looking at this for a number of years, is the normalization of anti-Semitism. that people are now saying, well, I don't know if that's anti-Semitic or not, and questioning that kind of thought process and saying it's okay to lump all Jews together in a certain category as just it just is, and so therefore it should be accepted as such. And that is incredibly concerning, because once you normalize something, it then becomes part of society's DNA. And once it does that, then it almost has an excuse to say, well, wait a minute, it's just a hop, skip, and a jump, I believe, from certain laws being passed against Jews. Could be kosher that comes next, no more kosher or anything like that. And then it's like where we can live, who we can marry, and where, and therefore we start bunching together. And I'm not trying to put a doomsday scenario of pre-Nazi Germany, but what I'm saying is if a society doesn't really hold itself accountable to the highest ideals, then therefore it can repeat the mistakes of the past. And I'm seeing some of those things that's happening in society around us that is incredibly concerning to me.
I think I remember it was England and France. They were talking about saying that being kosher, killing an animal in a kosher manner, was illegal. I don't know if that came through or not, but I remember that argument.
Yeah,
it was terrifying.
Certain European countries who have put Shemitah, which is the practice of ritual slaughter in the Jewish community, on a ban list. I think, and I'm going to have to check this, but one of the Scandinavian countries, I think, has actually banned it. But
I think it is
human rights and animal abuse kind of tangent, not necessarily because it's necessarily anti-Semitic. And the other countries that have tried it, I think, because halal and kosher have so much in common in the process of how it's killed, I don't think that there was a large enough cause to go against both halal and Shemitah. So for now, it's safe, I would say, because of the Muslim population in those countries who would not like to see a ritual slaughter of animals banned either.
One of the things that you and I have discussed, and I believe you've given speeches about, are the different types of anti-Semitism that are around now. I think there's 6 different types you've labeled. Can you get into that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. Look, anti-Semitism is a virus, right? And it's a virus as old as time. It's been around ever since there were Jews calling themselves Jews. There's always been somebody who's tried to rise up and destroy us and hasn't succeeded, right? That's the famous line of every Jewish festival we have. They try to kill us, they didn't succeed, let's eat, right? and so when you look at from the beginning of time, I would say, until now, I think the virus has mutated 6 times in order to encompass all different types of anti-Semitism, right? So the first one is ethnic anti-Semitism. And really, that's what the Nazis were all about. Like, if you had a Jewish parent or a grandparent, your blood was corrupt, you were impure, and you're inherently bad and needed to be wiped out, right? Make way for the master race. This, obviously led to 6 million Jews being murdered in the Holocaust. And in today's America, you've got people who want to try and do that. I mean, you look at the riots and the marches in Charlottesville with the tiki torches, and with people saying Jews will not replace us, chanting in the streets of American City, Jews will not replace us. It's using imagery of blood and soil. It's the same kind of imagery that was used in Nazi Germany. So I would say that's ethnic anti-Semitism. Jews make you impure. Next thing is religious anti-Semitism, right? And now this goes back until time of Christ. Jews killed Jesus, therefore Judaism is evil. The Jews are all bad, and this led to massive efforts in the church for mass conversion, and it was really a convert or die mass murder of Jews across the Middle Ages that started in 1096 and lasted over 250 years. And of just Jews who refused to convert, and they were just wiped out because of this libel that the Jews killed Christ. And what I find interesting, only in the year 2000, right? So not too long ago, only in the year 2000, the Pope officially announced wait for it, that the Jews were not responsible for the death of Jesus. And so I just want to say thank you to the Pope in 2000. Like 1,000 years maybe too late, a couple of thousand years too late. But at the end of the day, it still happens today, right? I've received letters in my home when I was leading Jewish communities who would have people say, I'm going to pray for you and your soul and your children, and urging me to convert before it's too late, whatever that means, right? So, I mean, they want to bless my heart, bless my soul, that kind of thing. And what they're really saying is they want to pray for my Jewish soul to find a pathway back to Christ.
Yeah.
And so this is religious anti-Semitism. The next is political anti-Semitism. Members of an opposing political group that disagree are likely to be accused by, supported by the Jews. Therefore, all Jews are members of this group and represent every wrong against a person or a party's political ambitions. For example, the Nazis said that all communists were Jews, and the communists said all capitalists were Jews, and then used this form of anti-Semitism to scapegoat Jews of the country's woes, the Jews in their own countries and all the woes of the country, to boost their own support for their party, right? The political marginalization of Jews, they're not having a party to affiliate to, is really the start of how modern day society can turn its back on all of us, right? Jews are very much involved in the politicalness of a country they've gone to. If you have a look at the Spain in the 1400s, right? If you have a look at anywhere in Europe, right? If you have a look, especially America, Jews have been drawn to politics. Why? Because we believe that there is a justice, and we believe in rule of law. We believe in, democratic values within the Jewish community. And if you have a party, especially when it comes to economic oppression, right, then you have people start saying, well, that economic oppression is due to the Jews, and and their support for the other political party in the country. And so the Jews have been scapegoated for political anti-Semitism. I would add, like, the fourth one is anti-Israel extremism and anti-Semitism. And just the continuous blame that Israel is a cause for all the world's problems, or all the problems in the Middle East. And it's the Zionists and the Jews who believe there's a right to self-determination in the land of our historic homeland, in the land of Israel, are to blame for everything. And it's only our fault for the suffering of the Palestinians, right? Now, I'm not saying you cannot criticize the state of Israel and its policies. I mean, I'm not a political expert, right, whatever. But what I would say is there are also tremendous amount of suffering the Palestinians have because of Palestinian leadership, whether it's the Palestinian Authority or whether it's, Hamas in Gaza. Now, I've visited Ramallah. I sat down a few years ago with Saeed Arakat, who was the chief of the Palestinian negotiation in his office in Ramallah, to see whether or not we could come to some kind of consensus. We did, but what I did is I saw a guy on the opposite side of the table with me, with about 3 other people in the room, who I believe has blood in his hands of many Jews. But what I wanted to do is I wanted to go find, what the solutions were. But what I'm saying is people are not doing that. So they just label, it must be Israel because Israel is the strongest country, and Palestinians in their minds are considered weak, right? So therefore, the strong has to be strong over the weak, and so the weak is oppressed, and therefore Israel is being the oppressor, and therefore Israel shouldn't exist. And calling for Israel to be wiped out with absolutely no regard for the Palestinian terrorist tactics that they have, or any kind of understanding of how the state of Israel, from the Balfour Declaration, even if you want to go back to our biblical homeland in Judea, Samaria, or the West Bank, whatever you want to call it, just somehow start history around about 67-ish, and Israel, won the 67 Six-Day War. And so therefore, since then, all of a sudden, the people of Palestinians have been oppressed. Don't care about Palestinians in Egypt, don't care about the Palestinian lives in Lebanon or in Jordan, where they have a lower life expectancy. They have hardly any rights in any of those countries because they're not made citizens, but only really care in the West for the Palestinian struggle because it aligns with their narrative of the oppressed. Like the oppressed and the oppressed, that if they're oppressed and my people are oppressed and their people are oppressed, then we all have something in common that we're oppressed, but they never delve down to the next level within that about what that oppression actually looks like. And so therefore they just keep to the very surface level and say, well, your people are oppressed and my people are oppressed. Well, we must be oppressed for kind of the same reason. Therefore, we should bind ourselves together and we'll speak out for your cause as long as you speak out for against Israel. And so that's how it basically, happens. And that is a very, very big problem. And on the international stage, we've seen it, United Nations, continuously. The only agenda item of the Human Rights Council is to blame Israel, right? I mean, think of the people in Yemen. Think about what's happening in Sudan and Africa. Think about what's happening in all of these trouble spots in the world that don't have a good Associated Press, right? Don't have freedom of the press, right? And their reporters aren't there. They're just singling out Israel as the only one that has a human rights violation. But if you have a look at all the other human rights violations, it makes Israel look like the Boy Scouts.
Yeah,
it really does.
Yeah.
And so when they start to do that, there's a continuous of, okay, well, listen, we don't know what's happening here. We know it's bad, right? We don't know what's happening here. It's no bad. I mean, just look at the amounts of people who have unfortunately died in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict since 1948. It pales in comparison to numbers if you have wars, that are raging like right now. I mean, more people probably die in Ukrainian, in Ukrainian-Russia latest conflict than ever died, in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. But yet there seems to be the
Jordanian statistic on that was that from 1948 until 2015, there were less than 70,000 Palestinians killed in all of those wars that they instigated in intifadas and terrorist attacks. 10,000 of those were killed by Jordanians when Arafat went into Jordan. 4,000 were killed by the Lebanese. And then another 3,600 of those were killed by Arafat himself. And you're like, okay, in Syria, how many did Assad kill? 800 million in 4 years? I mean, 800,000 in 4 years.
It's outrageous. I mean, but you don't even have to look at conflict. Look at some societies in the world that accept kind of like honor killings, right?
Yes.
The number of honor killings that happen, in Pakistan and India is just absolutely outrageous. Yeah, I don't see demanding on the streets. I don't see people asking for their countries to be exiled from the international community because a young girl, is stoned on the streets because of some kind of issue that one family has with another. And I think that is, I think when you pick and choose and you're only constantly saying the only Jewish state in the world is the cause of all the problems in the world, I think that is the anti-Israel anti-Semitism. So I think that is number 4. Number 5 is worldwide control anti-Semitism. Like the people in power are sometimes controlled by a shadowy cadre of Jews who sit at a table behind closed doors and make all the decisions around the world, right? We control the world, right? And this was started and formalized in 1903 when a publication came out called The Elder Protocols of the Elders of Zion, right? And it was talking about the worldwide Jewish conspiracy. And this book has been published and republished in multiple languages. And it was actually even available on Amazon last time, I think, until recently, right? But I don't think the book is available, but I think you can get the old audio version of it. So the person who's narrating the Elders and Protocols of Zion, you can actually get that, I think, at Amazon Audio. But that's the basic thing, that the Jews control the entire world. So therefore, there's some kind of mist that, in your life that's not going very well. You've basically got the worldwide conspiracy of Jews. Okay, so you have that. The next is industry anti-Semitism, right? That's number 6, right? There's disproportionate amount of Jews, in particular in a professional field, and an individual who's hurt or affected by persons or few people in this field that happen to be Jewish, then lump the entire individual, like the entire population or minority group, as part of their woes, right? So the most famous thing is something happens in Hollywood, right? Bad happens in Hollywood. So anti-Semitic statements that Jews control Hollywood or control the record industry or all accountants and bankers and they're obsessed with money, they must all be bad. The individual is never looked upon and judged by their virtues, no matter what industry they're involved in, and they should be labeled and thought of it as, regardless of their personality. The fact that they're Jewish, therefore, all Jews in that area, in that industry, are bad. So, for instance, I think the biggest trope, the anti-Semitic trope, is Jews control the media. I mean, where does that's ridiculous. If you ever look at the CEOs of the major corporations and news media, right? Maxwell, right, just stepped down, not Jewish. He has huge reach. It's just not true, right? And so, but I believe that this anti-Semitism is becoming more poignant today. I mean, if you have a look at like Kanye West's recent anti-Semitic tirade about the Jews controlling the industry and Adidas and whatever, and he said it was the Jews, because he had a couple of accountants, that was hurt on a business deal, and now suddenly me in my home in Columbus, I'm responsible for Kanye West's accountancy problems, so therefore all Jews are like that. I mean, these kind of anti-Semitic tropes, these six anti-Semitic tropes, at one time I see maybe one or two surface, but what we've seen recently, and when you talk about the uptick of anti-Semitism, which was your first question, what we're seeing is there's now 3 or 4 of them at one time in society. Mm-hmm. And the Jews are getting it from really kind of every angle, relentlessly, which is causing kind of itself kind of an self-fulfilling prophecy. There's more anti-Semitism. It's more acceptable to be anti-Semitic. That these kind of comments in all of these industries, anti-Israel, in the industry anti-Semitism, political anti-Semitism, religious anti-Semitism, right, et cetera, it's becoming one where it's a cauldron, a boiling pot of anti-Semitism. And unless we beat down these anti-Semites, unless we call them out, therefore we are going to be in a serious amount of trouble, because we won't be able to stop all of the different ones that are coming at us.
Yeah, we had an episode here last week or the week before where people were protesting a Board of Education curriculum about LGBT and describing and teaching kids from a very early age about these different groups. So all across Canada, they had a march against this. And they had one in Windsor. And my daughter, that she went, they had an anti-protest line. They stood on the sidelines, and all they did was hold their fingers up in peace. And there were over 1,000 people there. And over 800 were Muslims, because they're very much against it, which is their right to be very much against it. That's not what I'm arguing about, but it was the violence. But the kids ran around and threw stones and spit on people and kicked them and did all sorts of things. But as soon as they found out if somebody was Jewish, they freaked right out. Oh my God, we got Jews here. Let's beat the Jews. And my daughter almost got beaten. If the cops had not stepped in, she would have been beaten. And I'm sitting thinking, how does a peaceful march is one thing, but where does this go? Why does this happen? Why does it have to happen every time?
Because I think that the personality traits that I would say the enemies of the Jewish people, look at, right, or if they're involved in other things, right, the first personality trait they look at is being Jewish, right? Mm-hmm. You're sitting on a picket line and you're protesting to make sure that LGBTQ and trans members of the community have a right to be in society, right? So you're there supporting that. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't matter if you're supporting that. The thing that gets labeled at you straight away is, well, you're a Jew. And so therefore you're a Jew, you must be responsible for Israel, the political mess, you're controlling the education of our kids' schools, right? And allowing this stuff in schools. Again, you're hit with at least 3 of the 6 viruses of anti-Semitism. Right. Which then bubbles up into people's, minds and says that your daughter is the cause of their suffering. And that is a massive issue that we're not talking enough about.
I know, and we need to. Is there anything people could do? Like, I mean, in this situation, we were told there's nothing anybody can do. In your mind, is there something that a regular Jewish person can do to stand up and fight against this?
Yeah. I mean, look, I am not the person about posting on social media. I mean, I think everyone has their own silos. I think the people who read it, agree with you or like it. The people who don't will comment against it. You're never changing anybody's mind on social media, right? I just don't believe that. I think it's not worth the effort. I think one of the things that we can do is that we can hold our councils, companies, organizations to adopt the IHRA, that's the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance definition of anti-Semitism, that's been adopted by over 20 countries, and some of the US governors in the States have, right? So there is a specific definition that was agreed on by academics and countries, right? This is a big deal about what anti-Semitism is. And if councils and cities and universities and companies who claim to be, we're not anti-Semitic, or, and then they do some kind of weird thing with another group, or they do another thing with another group, but yet they don't want to talk and stand up for their Jewish employees or their Jewish customer base, I think that they can adopt the IHRA, which is a bottom line level that if any of their company personnel, any of their product, anything that they sell goes against this, right, then they could turn around and say, we care more about the people that come into our store or live in this city or XYZ than we do about the money or tax base or income or grant opportunities, right, that may, cause an affront to that definition that they have put, and say, listen, Jews are accepted as working in this company, living in this city, right? And therefore you break this, then therefore there is no place for you within our society.
Wow. Okay, you're coming back to us with another podcast, and that one I think we should talk about people like Whoopi Goldberg and Mel Gibson and the BDS and stuff like that. But for now, let's thank you so much, Joel, for coming on, and we will see you next time.
I look forward to it.
Okay, thanks, Joel.
Thanks.
Everybody, this was Joel Marcovitch, and have a good day.
What time will it be when war is no more? When bullets are melted and the warships moor?
This podcast is brought to you by Unbreakable Bindings Publishing Company. Executive produced by Lori Baldassi, produced by Ryan Richardson, hosted by Pam Goldstein.